Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. And this is our 10th season. Cue the applause right now, please. Cue the applause and the celebration. This is just really amazing. I'm enjoying this season. We've entitled it Say It Loud. And so, as always, I'm here in the studios. I'm talking with exciting colleagues who are doing amazing things around the country, around the world. And I just love having fun and enjoyable yet insightful and informative interviews with them. And today's guest does not disappoint. My special guest today is Michelle Behnke, Esquire. Is that still the thing that's used, Michelle?
It absolutely is.
Esquire.
Absolutely.
Michelle Behnke joined Boardman Clark. She's an attorney in 2004 after being elected to the 2025-2026 presidency of the American Bar Association. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. I believe she served in other roles as the secretary. This is very, very exciting, particularly having someone from our community do this. Outside of her role with the ABA, Michelle's practice is very broad. Her experience includes regularly assisting businesses in entity selection, drafting articles of organization, articles of incorporation, bylaws, operating agreements, real estate, so many things. Sounds like a real specialty. For me, she works with estate planning for clients by helping them to gather and review their financial information, et cetera, et cetera. It's really, really exciting. She's a product of our educational system here in Wisconsin, receiving her undergraduate degree in economics from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and her JD from the University of Wisconsin's Law School. A number of honors and recognitions, community involvement and board memberships, professional memberships, and we are just fortunate to have her here in the Madison community. And I'm excited about talking to her about her career, the reasoning behind choosing law as a profession, and just some of the uniquenesses of working and living in Madison and just doing some of the things that she's doing. So this is going to be a real interesting and fun conversation. Michelle, welcome to Black Like Me. How are you doing today?
I am fabulous. After that introduction, who couldn't be? Thank you so very much.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. I mean, I'm looking at these honors and recognitions. You've got the Distinguished Service Award from Wisconsin's Law Foundation. I'm just looking at these things, the YWCA Women of Distinction from 2004, the Leo Alumnus Award from UW-Madison's Law School. You need a whole separate page for these for this community involvement and board membership. I really appreciate your service to our community.
Thank you very much. I'm very blessed. Law is an incredible career, and the blessings that has brought to me really make me feel like I want to give back to the community. I need to give back to the community. I enjoy giving back to the community. The recognition sometimes gets,
sure,
that you don't do it for that reason, but it's nice to be that connected to my community.
And it's nice to have your peers recognize this.
Yes.
Now, I've got some questions I would love to discuss with you, but I always jump in with my icebreakers.
Sure.
And so we're moving into our Black icebreakers. And so, I have found that some of these are more generational, others are regional, where maybe people in the Midwest get it. So I want to see this. Michelle's a Midwestern lady, but let me just start off by just asking my standard: grits or cream of wheat?
Grits.
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 Okay, hold your breath, everyone. Hold your breath. Okay, are they buttery and sugary grits or savory grits with salt and pepper? How do you take your grits?
It's butter and salt.
Butter and
salt.
Oh, okay. We're gonna have to edit this. Gotcha. So even for breakfast, so I know people do that, but for breakfast?
For breakfast, it's butter and
That's
salt.
how my wife Jackie, she's from the South, she likes salt.
My parents were from Mississippi, so that's how we had them, and that's how I make them.
Oh, okay, all right. So let me ask you a few other questions.
Sure.
And I want to remind our listeners that what I love about Black Icebreakers is it shows a connection within the Black community about culture and things that hold us together. And so some of it, is sort of like folklore and mythical and fun and spiritual. But it's just fun to have these discussions. I have an idea about this because I met Michelle's dad when I was a younger pastor. Did you ever have to memorize an Easter speech for church?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. An Easter speech, an Easter song. Christmas, we had to do St. Luke's Gospel.
You had to do all of that?
We had to do all of that.
Now, I'm curious. So you're a preacher's kid. So your dad
Yep.
was a pastor.
Yep.
And also was served in the military. So,
Absolutely. Yep.
But so many folks in our community have found that the church has been as training ground for maybe politics or law or public speaking or business. I'm curious, looking back, if you had slides or video, Super 8, of yourself giving Easter speeches when you were a kid, do you think you would look at that and say, you know what, I had chops for a lawyer back then. I had moxie, I had confidence.
No. In fact, I will disclose, I say this, I actually don't keep this very secret. I don't love public speaking.
Okay, so that's an assumption that lawyers just love public speaking.
That's right. And most people that know me know I do love to talk. But public speaking was not something that came naturally to me. And through all of my career, even though I did those memorizations and things of that nature, the idea of standing in front of people and speaking still created nerves in me that I'll tell you a story some other time of my first appearance in this before the Supreme Court. So even though I did that, it did not come naturally to me. Now, you put me in a small group or across the table from somebody negotiating,
fine.
I am all over it.
But the
public piece and the large crowd part
interesting.
did not come naturally. No.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, you and I are from the same generation. Do you remember the names of any of the kids from Good Times?
Thelma. I cannot think of it.
Michael's a young kid.
The youngest. And then, of course, Dynamite.
That's right, Jimmy Walker.
Jimmy Walker.
I got you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, again, this might be just geographical or regional, but are you familiar when people use this phrase, I got to go get my butter whipped soon?
No.
I run these by people just to kind of see if this is a younger generation.
Yeah.
Younger folks refer to getting their hair done. Like if they're going to go to the salon, they'll say,
really?
I got to go get I got this hat on, but I'm going to get my butter whipped on Friday. So I don't know how hair becomes butter and whipped.
Yeah,
I was curious about that.
No, I'm from the I got to go get my hair did.
Oh, okay, that's right. Not got to go get my hair
butter
did.
Rip, but got to go get my hair did.
So since we're speaking about getting your hair did,
Yep.
Did your mom do your hair, whomever, like with a straightening comb in the kitchen on a Saturday night to get ready for the Lord's Day?
Actually, it was Saturday afternoon, which was the absolute worst. So
because that's when people are playing.
That's right. So we grew up in Madison on the northeast side of Madison, and there was another family, the Morgans.
Dee Dee Morgan?
Yes.
Okay.
So they had 4 girls, and then it was my sister and I, so 6 girls. And our 2 moms would production line this. 6 girls.
Really?
Oh, yeah. 6 girls. We got our hair washed. We got our hair braided. It got dried. And then one by one, we got it pressed and curled.
I was going to ask if you called it pressed.
Oh, yeah. Pressed and curled for Sunday morning. Now, the hard part was, they didn't always do it down from age. They kind of did it based on...
Who was dry?
Well, my sister had a head full of hair, and she was very tender-headed. So that took a lot of energy. You didn't want to do that one when you were dead tired, right? So she often had to go first.
She had to take one for the team.
She had to take one for the team. But once you had your hair pressed and curled, you couldn't go back outside.
No, you couldn't.
No, because you could not sweat that hair out.
No.
So you tried for whatever. You had to go to the bathroom. You had to do this. You were looking for something. But you were trying not to be the first one because that was the end of your play day on Saturday.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that was the end.
When you started talking about that, Michelle, I could smell the kitchen.
Oh, absolutely.
The pressed hair, the smell of the pressed hair. I had
the
just had a whiff
pomade.
of that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and the pomade.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness.
And we didn't have like the the straightening comb, we didn't have the special heater. That was on the stove.
That's what I tried to.
Right.
So it was on the stove. So it got hot.
It got hot.
Did you ever get burned? Yeah, that's a crazy question.
Yeah.
Did your mom put Vaseline on it or cocoa butter?
Vaseline.
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 You know, as we got older, don't they now say you don't put Vaseline
You're right.
on?
No, that actually holds the heat in or something, makes it worse.
You need ice or something to do.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned tenderheaded, which is actually one of my icebreakers, not for you, but just in general.
Yeah.
Please explain to our very diverse, but mainly mostly non-black audience, what does tenderheaded mean?
So you've got that natural good curl in your hair, right? And your mom would start combing through it, and it's the level of tolerance or the lack of tolerance you have to combing that hair out.
I love that description.
Yeah.
I was tenderheaded as a boy. I was like, I wore afros.
Yep.
So picking it out,
Yep.
you could cry. No, it just hurt.
And it, our parents knew that those little curls and little naps were tough.
Right.
But if they didn't say now stop all that.
You know it don't hurt that bad.
You know it don't hurt that
Stand up
bad.
here.
Stand
Sit up.
Sit up here before I give you something to cry about. Yeah. So you really didn't want to do that when you'd already been through 5 heads, because your tolerance for the crying and the tears and the slouching was out the door.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Because I imagine when someone's tenderheaded, they're not only crying about the pain,
Yeah.
and then they're probably going to move and squirm and get burned.
Yes.
And then they're also frustrated because they can't go outside and play.
That's right.
And then when it rains, it pours.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you have play cousins growing up, or folks that you found out maybe later, like, Mama, they're not related. They're no kin to us.
So in Madison, the Morgans were like that
They were
for
your play
us,
cousins.
right? But we did have cousins down in Waukegan, Illinois, and so to make sure that we stayed connected with lots of family members, we would often spend a week down in Waukegan, Illinois, playing with our real cousins.
With your real cousins.
With our real cousins. But it was a very different community in Waukegan, Illinois than it was in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh. Yes.
Yeah.
And that was pre-Great America, Waukegan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know Great America's not in Waukegan, but in that area.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was Waukegan.
That was Waukegan. Yeah.
Okay, my last icebreaker.
Yeah.
Did you ever skip gym class because your knees were ashy?
No.
Because your knees weren't ashy?
My knees were not ashy, but I will give you the alternative. In first grade, when my mom went for parent-teacher conference, she had a conference with my first grade teacher who said to her, Michelle's always the last one in from recess. And my mom was curious, was I late? Was I dawdling? Was I hanging in the hallway? Teacher didn't know. I was just always the very last child into the classroom. And so my mom came home and she asked me about that. And I said, well, Mommy, I have to go to the bathroom like you told me. She'd given me a little comb because, of course, black little girls' hair, when you go out and play in the wind, doesn't just fall right back down on your forehead. And my mom didn't want me sitting in class with my bangs standing straight up. So she'd given me this little comb, and I was supposed to go in the bathroom, comb my bangs back down. And the teacher did not appreciate or understand the difference in black little girls' hair versus white little girls' hair.
That is so interesting. And of all the things to talk about in first grade, whether you're reading or raising your hand or eating your food.
That's right.
It's taken her a long time. And she hadn't gone in the bathroom to see where you were, but you were in there combing down your bangs.
And not late, just the last one to come back in the room.
That's...
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Starting files, starting notes, talking in the teacher's lounge. Like, I don't know what it is about her, but she's
always the last one.
She's always the last one.
Always the last one.
Is she slow? Is she shy? Does she not? Don't even get us. Don't even get us going on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Michelle, I want to talk to you about a number of things, but one is, and we won't go into just a lot of detail about the American Bar Association, but that's a big deal. Like my research is showing it was founded in 1878 on a commitment to set the legal and ethical foundation for the American nation. This is big. It's kind of like the American Dental Association. You always hear it on commercial. You don't know exactly what it does.
Absolutely.
But the 30,000 foot view, What purpose does the American Bar Association serve in our nation, our legal system today?
So it really is a house for lawyers, training of lawyers. So that's everything from CLE and emerging areas of law. We're doing a task force on AI right now, for instance.
Oh, really?
Yeah. How that affects our clients, how it affects the practice of law. Seminars, again, to make sure that you're competent and advancing in the law,
Sure.
studying areas of the law. Sometimes we lobby on issues. Those who are making the laws are not always lawyers, and so they don't always have a full understanding of the effects of laws on our world and our country. We have a lot of work that actually is connected to serving your communities. Everything from DEI in the profession and DEI more broadly. We have things on women in the profession. We have things on homelessness and poverty. We have things on bar leadership. So just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean that you know how to lead a group. But if you want to be a good leader, it's like anything else. You study, you learn, you try to find out what the cutting edge things are and make yourself better.
So its sounds largely on professional development.
Absolutely.
No, that's really nice. I didn't know that. I also have noticed that in the past 20 years, perhaps going back to 1995, I see that the ABA, or the American Bar Association, has elected its first female president.
Yep.
In 99, its first Native American male.
Yep.
First African American male in 2023. I see some real strides being made. This is significant. So does the ABA pride itself in wanting to be really relevant in these issues of making sure that it focuses on inclusion and giving, broad spectrum of people leadership opportunities?
Well, there is a dark history in the ABA. In its early days, they did not permit people of color to be members of the ABA. It was by invitation only. And in fact, there was a...
Until when?
Oh,
like the 70s?
Oh, no, it was before. It was before that. In the early 40s.
Okay.
Late 30s, early 40s, and there was in fact an attorney general, African American. Based on his credentials, they admitted him, and then they realized he was a black man, and rescinded his invitation. And so it took quite a bit of time thereafter. I'm not the first person from Wisconsin to be an ABA president. In 1946, Carl Ricks from Milwaukee was elected president. And during his term, they actually changed the rule regarding membership within the ABA. But even after they changed that rule, it still took them another, I think it's about 7 years before the first person of color was actually admitted to membership in the ABA.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. So with that backdrop, it took them a minute to come to understanding diversity. They didn't call it that then. But since that time, in fact, we have 4 goals, one of which is eradicating racial discrimination and exclusion. And so these strides that you mention are clear evidence that it is important to the association. Yeah.
Do you know roughly what percentage of U.S. attorneys are African American?
Generally speaking, I think the last survey that I saw, we're probably at about 3 to 5%.
So like Dane County and probably Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Okay, I never knew that, so I was just very curious about that.
Which is a much lower percentage than what we make up of the whole of the population.
Oh, definitely. We're like 12% of the national population.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Is the ABA preparing itself in any way to respond to any challenges there may be to, I don't know, say upcoming election? Like, are those the kinds of things that the ABA might organize around, or that you're thinking about this time of year?
Mary Smith, the immediate past president, formed a democracy task force. And that democracy task force was looking at the issues around democracy, everything from voting to civics education, civic engagement. So we really are paying attention to that and the oath that lawyers take when they become lawyers, we believe we have a special obligation to engage with our communities and to participate and show people everything from how to get registered to vote, the importance of voting, civics education around voting, and to actually serve in our communities. 2 presidents ago, Deborah Enix Ross, another good friend of mine, she made a clarion call to lawyers that we needed to step up and actually not just observe elections, but go and serve as poll workers, so that we're
I like
making
that.
that we're making sure that the machinery actually works. If you don't have, most people don't even realize most of the poll workers are volunteers. These are
Yes.
not the paid city workers.
Right.
And so if you don't have enough volunteers, the lines get long. The lines get long. Somebody says, gee, I don't have time to wait. I only have a certain amount of time on my job to go and vote, those kinds of things. So all of that affects the civic engagement.
Do you think the field of law is held in high regard today as perhaps when you started law school?
Everybody's got a good lawyer joke.
Sure.
It's really, it's interesting to me because people will say that lawyer joke to you, but if they have a lawyer that is assisting them, be it with, something bad, litigation, they were injured, or something great, I call it happy law, that I do, forming a business, selling a business, that lawyer they love. That lawyer is a
Right.
great lawyer.
Right.
My lawyer is a great lawyer. But I think people have seen, we're all human. Lawyers have been in the news for
Sure.
doing this or doing that, which does not seem so high-minded. So we end up being the butt of jokes every now and again. Yeah.
I'm curious from your perspective, what is it about the ABA that's unique to you, its unique role, and what's motivated you? Well, I'll say this. What has motivated you to want to have this top position within the ABA?
So I have to say it's kind of funny. I previously served as treasurer. I have a financial background. I do business stuff. Went to grade school and high school Catholic nuns who used to always say, no money, no mission. So that was, right?
I preach that.
Yeah, exactly. You can have all the mission you want, but you need some money to be able to carry that out. And that's what I said when I was treasurer. I wanted to make sure that I looked over the finances and that we were making good, solid financial decisions that would allow us to carry out those mission initiatives that we talk about. And some people suggested when I did that maybe a next step would be, seeking the presidency. And I had no aspirations or plans. No, absolutely none. But I will say, after I was working and the more I learned about the ABA, when you're putting together a budget and you see where the money is spent, you learn an awful lot about an organization.
Yeah, you
and
do.
I thought I knew. I was, needless to say, very engaged. I thought this was great work, but I learned even more. And that's really what propelled me to actually then seek the presidency. So it is the breadth of the work that we do. It is the commitment. This is time out of people's busy work days.
Right,
They
right.
have billable hour requirements. They have obligations with their families and their communities, but they're coming together to try and solve problems and to make the profession and their communities better. And I'm there, I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but being in a room like that is really motivating to me.
And it sounds like a really great opportunity. So I want to just let our listeners know that Michelle and I connected through an email exchange concerning our Center for Black Excellence and Culture. And you reached out and just asked questions about what we were doing. And by the time you emailed me, you had already become a donor. Like you had already given to the project. And so we connected during COVID. But most recently, we've had more in-person interaction because we've served on a task force or an ad hoc committee for the University of Wisconsin-Madison looking for belonging. And so we've interacted more recently. But as she mentioned to me perhaps a few years ago, that she was going to be running for president of the American Bar Association, I sort of made a mental note that when she gets in that position, and certainly listeners, you can tell by now there was no doubt that she was going to do that. I knew that I wanted to talk to her about that. So talk to me a little bit about this. So you grew up in Madison.
Yes.
So your father was in the military, and when he retired from that, he came here. I mean, you're successful. You could be anywhere. I mean, you're a sharp attorney, Black woman, strong, well educated. You're able to go toe to toe against anyone on any sensible issue. But you made a choice to stay in Madison. Talk to me about that decision to stay here in Madison in a small community. Because something about you is very large city. Like the way you dress,
Yeah.
and I mean this with all respect,
Yeah.
you carry yourself like a Chicagoan,
Yeah.
or perhaps someone from D.C. or Atlanta. Because there's a casualness in Madison. And sometimes I'll meet Black folks in Madison, and I'll say, "You're not from here, are you?" Just because because if they are wearing jeans, they're going to be pressed, or
That's right.
something. It's going to be different.
Absolutely.
But what caused you to stay here in Madison?
I don't think that I certainly didn't have the words to call it this, but Madison was the place that I was raised. It was the place that I felt comfortable and home. It was not as diverse, and it was not, there were lots of people at the university,
Sure.
right? But they would often cycle through Madison.
Of course.
And go on to their next biggest and best thing. But if you want a place to be more diverse, somebody's got to stay.
Wow.
And so for me, that was part of it. And once I decided to stay, it's been a piece of what I do. I often invite the incoming law students to our house. I had a fairly frank conversation with a former dean, not the current dean, a former
Sure.
dean who did a great job of recruiting students of color to the UW Law School. But part of what he said to them was, yeah, Madison's kind of a sleepy little town. It's not metropolitan. It's not this, it's not that. But you can survive anything for 3 years. And what I said to him was, yes, that's true. I get that. But you've just given them permission on day one not to consider staying here,
Yes.
right? I hope for them to do whatever it is they'd like to do. One of the things I'd like them to consider
Stay here.
is stay here and change. Change the nature of our community, expand the nature of our community. And if you give them permission on day one, they're just marking off the days till they can leave,
you're right.
So you're making my job harder. I can't come in on the
Sure.
tail end and change their mind when they've been marking all the days off. But that's really it. If you want some difference, right, you have to be the difference you want to see.
And besides challenging people to consider being here, you've made yourself available. You and Daryl have opened your homes, or made yourself available. We operate an emerging leadership program for Black professionals in this community, and one of the things I say to each cohort is, I need you to stay in Madison.
Absolutely.
Yes, we've got our issues. Yes, we probably rank on the negative side of things in a lot of areas.
Right.
But I told them I don't know a lot of places where I wasn't born here, but I've been here since I was 6, where a homegrown African-American male can raise $29 million in 2.5 years to do something for the good of the community. This is a community that will get behind you as well. So if we want people to stay in this community, we have to challenge them to stay and then provide community for them.
Absolutely.
But our white allies, I don't know which dean that was,
Yeah.
but then they've got to also take ownership.
That's right.
That there are things that they can do to make those 3 years or 4, whatever, more bearable, and to realize there are people who will work with me and befriend me and have my back. You're not
Absolutely.
on your own,
Right.
Because that could help people stay as well.
Absolutely. I'll give you another example. I had the opportunity to serve on the board for the Overture. And what I said to law students often was, okay, if culturally you're not seeing the kind of entertainment that you want to see, you have to speak up. There is no reason that the people who are putting together the things at the Overture or Capitol, whatever the venue is, that they will know, using my legal term, sui sponte,
Right.
what it is you want and need,
Right.
right? And then I said, But then when you see the stuff that you want to go see, the stuff that speaks to your soul, show up, right? Then you've got to buy the tickets. Then you've got to show up, because that's the only way they're going to understand that this is, in fact, valued and desired in this community. And then I started to see a difference in the programming and the shows that were brought here. And it was not just, Broadway kinds of things. Who would have thought, you get to see Diana Ross come, right?
Patti LaBelle.
Or Gladys Knight, right? And I'm up there just, having myself a good time. And I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
Right. I remember when Boys to Men came.
Yeah.
That place was rocking.
Absolutely.
It felt like that place was rocking. But Michelle, I mean, come on, New York firms, Atlanta firms, Chicago, they had to have come after you. Like being involved in the Wisconsin Bar Association, I know they've had to try to get you to Milwaukee and other places. You just kept saying no. Like were you recruited out? Did people try to get you to leave here to go do something else?
Initially, no.
Interesting.
Initially, no.
Because they thought you wouldn't fit in larger venues?
Well,
or cities?
yeah, because I'm from Madison and,
See, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Because we are perceived, some of us as African Americans are perceived in larger communities and venues as maybe being a step behind time.
That's right.
A little
Yes.
country, a little Midwestern,
that's
and
right.
we might not be as sharp.
That's right. We're not ready for the big time.
Hey, good people. You're hearing this message from me because you're enjoying a Black Like Me podcast episode. And like so many people throughout the U.S. and around the world, you're perhaps enjoying and benefiting from these honest conversations between everyday extraordinary Black people and how they navigate our world. It actually takes a lot of work and creativity to produce an amazing podcast episode for your personal and professional enrichment and enjoyment. But you can help lighten the load by pausing for a moment and considering the benefit of this podcast to you, and then clicking on the Patreon link in the show notes to become a supporter of the podcast. Listeners make this show enjoyable, but it's supporters that make it possible. For as little as $2 a month, you can help make this award-winning podcast even better. So take a moment and think about what this podcast means to you, how you respect it and how you look forward to it and how it gives you great insights. Click that link and support at a level that's commensurate with your benefit. Contrary to popular belief, podcasts are far from free, and their impact is far more than merely nominal. So I invite you to take a moment, join with me in making this podcast even more powerful, even more polished, and even more popular. We want to take these conversations around the world, and you can be a part of that. Click the links now.
Yeah.
But what they don't understand, and at least this is my situation, I won't try to push this on you, but I'm curious how you speak to it. I have found that because we grew up here.
Yep.
You're an econ major. I was also. I doubled in econ and African American history. But I realized because I went to high school with professors' kids. So when I got to UW, I was like, wait, Mr. Wojcik, Nick's dad is the chair of the math department? Like, I had lunch over his house. So I realized I was raised with professors' kids. So when I am given a chance in broader Blacker venues,
yes,
I certainly relate to my Black community, but I also know how to run with the white community because that's where I was trained. And so I find that I have a different kind of swag because I know how to navigate my people and my community and the broader community. Does that make any sense to you?
Bilingual.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Bilingual. Absolutely. And I say that to some of the law students, and I'll say, yes, this is a smaller community.
Right.
But I remember coming out of law school and being interested in issues like housing. And because I did real estate, back then it was more residential real estate, I got connected to realtors. And the realtors came together and put together a housing foundation with the goal of providing some funding to help first-time home buyers with down payment assistance. So we put together a whole loan program. Next thing you know, I'm on the board of the Housing Foundation. There are realtors that I have seen across the table. There are bank presidents. And I say, okay, if I'm in Chicago and I'm 2 years out of law school, I'm not sitting at the table with bank presidents, right? And it's those kinds of interactions that I'll say jump-started my career, when you feel a passion for whatever it is you're doing, even though I wasn't providing legal work for that housing foundation, people saw how I interacted and the passion that I brought, and they assumed, correctly, that I would bring that same passion to my legal work. And so I would get referrals from somebody who was the president of a bank.
Interesting.
Right? And so I have said to a lot of law students, you could go to Chicago and there will be however many thousand just like you, right?
Right.
In Madison, there are not that many thousand just like you. The possibility that you will interact
Definitely.
and learn skills that will jumpstart your career. If at some point you really feel like you need to go someplace else, I can't stop you. I'm not saying that's wrong. You have to make the decision for you. But I'm telling you, you're going to walk away with skills that are probably ahead of your peers who went directly
definitely.
to some large metropolitan area.
And how well have those skills served you as you ran for the presidency of the American Bar Association?
Absolutely. To your point, I've been a solo practitioner before I
Right.
joined Boardman. It would be easy for me to think, oh, gee, I'm just a solo practitioner, or wouldn't be seen as a person capable of running for the ABA. But I've also had those interactions with bank
Right.
presidents and chancellors of universities and deans of law school, and I won't say I have no self-doubt, but I have operated in those environments enough to know I can hold my own. I can absolutely hold my own. And so that certainly gave me more
Sure.
confidence to pursue this than I might have otherwise thought as a solo practitioner in Madison, Wisconsin.
Now, your approach to how we make Madison more inclusive and more diverse is somewhat unique, because it's very easy to look for the platform of a microphone or a camera to say we need more diversity or making demands. Your approach is a little bit more low key, because you're reminding people that they can grow here. You have access here. There are opportunities here. But folks who take your route can often be forgotten, because we'll remember the people who are at the mic, even if they're saying blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But when you're more quiet and relational and having people in your homes, and you're giving them the real skinny or the real deal on situations, it's not as glamorous or public. So how do you keep yourself encouraged in your work when it is not necessarily publicly acknowledged that you're an influencer and you're helping this community become more diverse?
I recently had a little celebration for the election.
Yes.
And my husband, who everybody thinks of as really quiet and mild-mannered.
He looks that way.
He does. But he took my breath away in his remarks about me. And he said this very sweet, loving thing that a husband would say, but I wouldn't have expected most other people to say, which is, he remembered exactly when he met me. And he said to other people, I'm betting most of you will remember when you first met Michelle. And after he gave his speech, there were a couple of people, in particular, black women, lawyers, who I had those conversations with, had encouraged them to go to the law school here, who are, in fact, in this community. And one of them in particular came up and said, oh, I remember exactly when I met you, and I remember exactly what you said to me that encouraged me to stay here, and you were exactly right. That's what keeps me going. It doesn't matter to me whether people know exactly what I do,
Right.
but I know that I have touched people and connected people and gotten people to think about Madison differently.
And they know.
And they know.
And they know.
And they stayed. Yeah.
Now, you made that choice, and it was
Yeah.
what's really interesting. And you and I have never talked about this,
Yeah.
but once I finished undergrad, I wanted to head to Chicago, Atlanta. I want to be some place where people would not ask to touch my hair.
Yep.
Yep. And somewhere in elementary, middle school, you have to start taking showers. At least you used to here in Madison. Alex, your hair's not wet because it's not falling. Like, there's always this novelty. People were nice to me,
Absolutely.
as I'm sure they were nice to
Yeah.
you, but there's always this reminder that you were different So I wanted to go someplace where that wasn't the issue.
Yes.
But I remember hearing this voice inside saying, but if you, as a person who has experience navigating this space, if all of you leave, who's going to help the next generation? It sounds so similar to what you said you thought.
Absolutely.
And I remember where I was. I was on Badger Road. I had just, I remember just thinking about this, and I said, I'm not going anywhere. I was accepted to UW Oshkosh. I was going to run track there. I met the track coach, the athletic director.
Yep.
I'd been recruited. I was going to get out of Madison, go to a smaller town, Oshkosh, Bagosh, where the overalls and the coveralls and the baby clothes are made.
Yeah.
But the last minute, I felt like I was supposed to be in Madison, but it was for the reason of modeling something for generations coming behind us. I know some of the cost of that, but I'm curious, as you look back on your career, what would you look at and say, wouldn't do anything different, glad I stayed? But whether it's personal or emotional or cultural, talk to me a little bit about what you think it may have cost you to stay in this community, not just a smaller community, but in Madison.
Yeah. So part of it was, and it's kind of interesting in the current, growing up in Madison, going to Catholic grade school, high school. I talked about going to Waukegan to play with my cousins. And, you'd go down there and they'd say, "Ooh, you talk so proper."
Yes.
"Ooh, wait, come here. Ask her to say something," right? And they wanted you to talk because it sounded different. And there were parts of me that wondered at points whether being immersed in this community, whether I was in some way not fully embracing my Black culture.
Were you whitened by the process?
Right.
She talked white.
Yeah, she talked white. And so there were parts of that I wondered whether being someplace else, being someplace where I wasn't the only, would immerse me in my culture and my background, and refill the tank, so to speak. But then as I talked to my parents and things, and they said, "Honey, whatever it is you may experience, the fact of the matter is every single solitary day you are Black. There is no question.
Everybody knows that.
Everybody knows that. If you're having a moment, you can have your moment, but there is no question.
Pull that compact out your purse and look in that mirror."
Exactly. You are Black. That is how you experience the world. That is how the world experiences you. And when I kind of got past that and realized I didn't need to talk differently, I know how to eat grits. I know how to make grits.
Right.
I know how to cook greens. Right.
All that stuff.
I know the history. I know my family history. I know where my
You're
parents
not running from anything.
I'm not running from anything, and I am fully immersed in my culture. So living in Madison didn't mean that I gave that up. It meant I experienced it differently, but I still experienced it. I still have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So has the process of navigating for all these years of your career weakened you or strengthened you? When you stand where you are today, do you say, you know what, that stuff made me, or I'm just battle worn? Or does it depend on the day?
No, it kind of depends on the day, but mostly I will say it has made me. I have often told stories, both being a woman and a Black woman in the business world. When I first started practicing, there weren't that many women in the business world. I'd walk into a room and it was men in, Brooks Brothers suits, and somebody would say, "Hey, could you get me a cup of coffee?" Because they assumed I was the assistant.
Yes,
right?
Yes. The paralegal.
I'm not even sure they would have given me that, but
okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
But at the beginning, that was really tough. I didn't know what else I needed to do to be lawyer-like, to be taken seriously. And then I just realized, okay, well, if you're going to underestimate me, if you don't understand who is in this room and what I'm doing, okay. And I could sit there in that room until the meeting started, and they are just talking their hearts out. And I'm like, okay, taking notes. Okay, this is important. That's not important. Let's begin. And the look on their face when they would realize that I was the lawyer that they had just been talking in front of.
I love it.
Right? You learn some lessons.
Michelle, is there a book in there somewhere?
There might be. There might be. Yeah. So, I used some of those moments that challenged me and tried me to my advantage over time. Those first times, though, I'm not going to lie. I went home and I was like, how much more expensive a suit must I wear? What
Right.
else must I do to look like the lawyer? And that was tough.
Sure.
Yeah.
There were times, I can remember after I finished my doctorate degree, I had an assistant. He was an intern. He had just finished seminary. He used to work on a podcast. He's actually in a meeting upstairs, Tyler. And I remember going to a meeting once, and someone walked up to him and extended their hand to him. And I'm old enough to be his dad. I'm twice his age. Said, oh, you must be Dr. G, because they couldn't fathom
That's right.
that I would be
That's
the
right.
person with the doctorate and that he would be working for me. And then you have to still walk into the meeting and chair it, be professional.
That's right.
Be present, not act up. This is one of my black icebreakers. But
Yeah.
older folks used to say, "Act your age and not your shoe size."
Size, right.
Like don't come in
Yeah.
here acting 9. Like don't
Right.
like you can't let that stuff shake you. I love that our listeners get to understand that we don't walk around lamenting the fact that we're black or licking our wounds or asking for sympathy. It's just that when you see us as the founders and fundraisers of a multi-million-dollar project or the president of the ABA or whatever the other places are, you need to show some respect because this individual is bi, if not trilingual. They know they have the savviness to navigate their own communities and others, but still show up right and proper and correct in business settings, and how to refresh ourselves.
That's right.
So that doesn't destroy us. That's the task that many of our colleagues from the predominant culture don't have to necessarily worry about or do. But I think it's an opportunity to understand that someone does have to think about those things.
That's right.
And we're still showing up
That's
in
right.
the first chair.
That's right. Earlier in my career, I got involved. We had now it's a Milwaukee-based group, but we had a Madison-based black lawyers group. And it wasn't that we necessarily needed to duplicate another bar association, but it was that renewal part where you could walk into a room and that might be the only time that week or that month that you weren't the only one in a room.
Yes.
Right? And you didn't have to worry about translating. You didn't have to worry about the look that you were getting and trying to figure out, was that a look of disrespect? Was that a look of confusion? What was that? And so finding ways to bring that renewal to yourself, because as you said, you've got stuff that you got to do. And if you carry that right on the tip of your nose every day, it'll get in the way of getting that other stuff done.
It
right?
can either tank your health or your career.
Right.
Michelle, when this center is built, we might have to bring a semblance of that back, even if it's not formally organized.
Yes.
The kind of space. I mean, you just named why that is extremely important. Like during the work of the center, people have said, well, why do you have to have your own space? We're not asked that as much now as we were in the beginning because of exactly
That's right.
what you said. Because even if, like, let's say going back with the ABA and
Right.
before the 1940s where you had to be invited in, so you knew you couldn't just walk in.
That's right.
You perhaps didn't get your hopes up. You knew you couldn't do that. The energy that is expended by saying, what was that look? What was that gesture? What was that sigh? The ability to not completely pin what is meant by a certain gesture or an
That's right.
attitude or a statement
That's right.
is more debilitating and frustrating than just blatant, get out of this room.
That's right.
People don't understand that. Trying to read the room while you're leading the room
That's right.
is like walking and chewing gum and jumping double dutch at the same time.
Absolutely. It is multitasking to the nth degree.
Yes.
And so my mom and many others, you come home at the end of the week and you say you're tired. It wasn't tired because you'd been lifting boxes and
Exactly.
It is tired from that double, triple translating and trying to figure out, is this something I need to address right here, right now?
Right.
Is that a somewhere down the line? Is that a keep your eyes open because, this is not going the right direction and you got to start documenting?
Will this derail my career if I address it?
Right. All of those things and trying to decide, that takes an awful lot of energy. So finding ways to replenish yourself so that you don't just wear out is really critical.
Who were your role models growing up on a local or national, whether they were legal minds or not? Who were some of the role models that encouraged you just to pursue your aspirations?
Well, certainly my parents.
Sure. I love that.
Yeah. I told a story when I gave my speech at the ABA. My mom was not a pity party kind of person, So if I came home and I was...
She was from Mississippi.
Exactly. So if I came home and I was complaining about something, et cetera, her natural response was, and so what are you going to do about it? And if I didn't have an answer, that was also, then I'm not listening, right?
Wow.
I'm not just going to sit here and let you whine
Right.
and complain, right? So either make
I
a
love
plan or...
Go sit down. Get out of my sight. Get out of my sight.
Stop. Right. So she was a big motivator.
Sure.
She was a big motivator. My dad would tell us that we could do absolutely anything. I'm not sure I knew what anything meant, right? We, especially in communities of color, we want to motivate our children. We tell them you can be anything. I've tried to be a little bit more specific because
Sure.
saying anything,
Right.
they don't know what the world has to offer them. But my dad always said you could do anything. That was also followed by, except for drop out, right? So he was
Right.
very specific. So you can do anything, but you can't drop out.
Right.
You will finish college, those kinds of things. So that absolutely made it clear to me directions that I was going. Later in my educational career, early in my law school career, actually Shirley Abrahamson was a big motivating factor. My husband and
wonderful.
I met in law school. We met at our first year.
Really? I didn't know that you two met in law school.
Yes, we met in our first year, at the end of our first year. About 8 weeks later, we got engaged.
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Dang, Daryl is smooth.
He put a ring on it.
Wow.
We got married a year after the following June.
You were married in law. So you
We
went
were
to
married in law
It's like a
school.
married
Yes, we were
couple.
married in law school. And when I graduated, we were expecting our son Derek. So
Well,
when I was standing there in front of the Supreme Court and I raised my hand to take my oath, I was expecting. And Shirley Abrahamson said to me, I know this will come as I was part of the Student Bar Association, even way back then. And so she was our keynote speaker, and she pulled me aside and she said, because she could obviously see I was very pregnant, and she said, some people are going to tell you you can't be a good mom and a good lawyer, and I'm here to tell you you absolutely can.
I was in band with her son, Dan.
Yes,
We both played trumpet
Yeah.
in middle school.
Yeah. And she was, as they would say, serious as a heart attack. This was not like ethereal kind of, she was like, she looked at me and
She meant that.
She meant that. And she was not taking, I don't know. She was very clear that I could do both and I should do both and I would be good at both. And
Wow.
and she didn't, I had corresponded with her and things in preparation for this, but she didn't know me.
And
But
just
she was
walked up
that
and said
definitive.
that.
Yeah, she was that definitive about being able to navigate this. And I was just like, well, she's a Supreme Court justice. She ought to know.
She knows what she's talking
She
about.
knows what she's talking about. So it really gave me confidence.
Love hearing that.
Yeah.
She lived here in South Madison.
Yeah, she did.
When I was a kid, because
Yeah.
Dan and I were both walking distance of our middle school.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And my last question: if you had to sit back and point to a TV law show,
Yeah.
and say, this is what it's like. Tell me one or two law shows, present or canceled, that either one you enjoyed, or you're like, you know what, it can be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
L.A.
So,
Law.
I was going to say L.A. Law back in the day, not because the way they portrayed the cases so much, but actually the interpersonal between the people in the
Well, that was the
firm.
magic of the show.
Yeah, yeah. So there were people who brought in the big clients, and everybody in the firm had to jump when they said
Sure.
jump, right? And then there were the clients that you really wish weren't clients, but somehow, but somehow you would apply your skill and acumen, and you'd get an outcome that maybe some people wish didn't didn't get for them.
Sure.
But it was high powered and fast paced, and it probably also showed something that most people don't think about for lawyers, which is your client's problems don't happen neatly between 8 and 5, right? And so your lawyering doesn't neatly fall between 8 and 5. You think about those client issues in the middle of the night, something comes to you, issue, a thought, a
Really?
potential solution. Yeah, I keep a little pad of paper on the side of my nightstand because things come to you in the middle of the night. Sometimes you worry for your clients. You know that it's not going to be the outcome that they want. And just even breaking bad news to their clients, how they're going to take it, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So that I think probably showed, that show showed
In L.A. law.
in LA law, that showed a lot more about what it's like
Right.
for the lawyer side.
How about Ally McBeal? You ever watched that show?
I did.
I loved
The
Ally
Dancing
McBeal.
Baby put me over the
Okay,
edge. But,
okay.
but otherwise, yes, I watched that one too.
Are there any on today that you look at and say, that's a pretty good depiction, or is it just all just sort of soap opera
yeah.
kinds of stuff with a legal twist?
I don't get as much opportunity to watch TV these days, but now things are a little bit more sensationalized, and I things like DNA that it'll be crystal clear, or
Right.
various other kinds of evidence.
Sure.
So it makes it seem like when you get a verdict or when you get a decision that it's absolutely clear. In the legal system, it's not
like
always that clear. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember watching any old law shows? Ironside. What was the one with Raymond Burr? Perry Mason.
Perry Mason. I was a little younger, and I'm not
Sure.
sure I appreciated what they were doing. I would rather watch Cowboy Eddie on Channel 3.
Oh yes. Oh, Marsh the Marshal.
Marshall the Marshal. But
Yeah.
I think when I was younger, again,
I haven't heard Cowboy Eddie in decades. I love it. I remember that.
I know, but the speaking in public part that I told,
Gotcha.
that seemed awfully scary to me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I didn't watch them and enjoy them in that respect, because that seemed like something I wasn't
Sure.
capable of doing. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to ask you one last question,
Sure.
and let me know if you can't address this. It's
Okay.
a Supreme Court question.
Yep.
If you can just speak as an individual and not connected to an organization. How shocked are you, or are you shocked with some of the decisions that the Supreme Court is making that affects like diversity and recruitment at universities? Like as a person who's not a part of the legal world, I will often, but I'm a historian. I feel like I've gotten in a time capsule and I've gone backwards. Legally, does it just feel to you like I never thought that I would see the kinds of legal decisions about race, or the perception of race and education and recruitment? And I'm just, is this just an outsider's perspective, or does this catch some legal minds by surprise?
So I'm not a litigator, and I'm not a
Sure.
Supreme Court litigator, but if you go back to even the first decisions, the idea was that there was a higher state interest. And if there is a higher state interest, you may be able to do something different than equal protection, right?
Right.
And so in those first decisions, they recognized that kind of the way the world operated, the state interest of giving everybody an equal opportunity was not really being served. Something needed to intervene. The hope and the goal was, of course, that you would get to a point where you didn't need any extra intervention.
Right. Right.
The Supreme Court decisions that have come out more recently suggest that we've reached that point. Right? And if we had reached that point, those decisions would be
Unnecessary?
fine. Oh, it'd be fine.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
fine. The part that's hard to accept is that for those of us who are walking around in the world who see and experience this
We
every
haven't
day,
reached that. We have not
haven't-
yet arrived.
That's right. That's right.
Gotcha.
And so that's the hard part.
Yes.
On a legal basis, what they're deciding and equal protection and the equal protection arguments are perfectly valid. It's a question of whether our entire country operates as those amendments to the Constitution envision, and those of us who are experiencing a different reality say, no, we're not
Right.
there yet.
So some people in our nation or the world may think, they may be afraid and say these are mean people. It might not be that. It might be even more frightening than this.
They
that
don't
they,
understand.
that they don't that they are so deluded that they think we arrived in the 70s.
They
We arrived. There's no need for this. Everyone has the same opportunity.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. I mean, in one of the things we talk about in DEI is trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and other experiences. Your experience and my experience may be different. That does not mean that your experience is invalid. It doesn't mean that mine is invalid.
Right.
Those two things can coexist.
Exactly.
Right? For a lot of people, particularly majority culture people, they have not experienced what I've experienced, and it's very difficult for them to believe or understand that there is some experience that's different than theirs because they just don't see it.
Right. Right.
Right? And so in their world, it is all perfectly
Right.
fine.
Because they can't imagine.
They can't believe that, or they haven't experienced two different realities that coexist at the same time.
Wow.
Right? So if their experiences happen, when I tell them something, I mean, you've experienced that.
Sure.
Something has happened and you'll raise it with somebody and they'll say, well, maybe they intended, right? They want to explain it away in a way that's consistent with their experience because that's all they've experienced.
That's so interesting. I had a plane ride recently, and I get to watch movies that I don't normally watch because, like you, I don't get to watch a lot of television, but I like watching tennis. I watch a lot of the Olympics. But I was flying to Southern California, and I watched what is this called? Something about the magical Negro.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
But it's very interesting.
Yes.
And in one of the scenes, I won't tell it just in case people want to watch it, but if enough of our listeners watch it and then you reach out to us and tell us that you've watched it, I'll talk about it on the show. But I need, how many, Eli? I need 25 of you to watch it and to just write a comment that you want me to have a discussion. I'll invite someone to talk about it. But there's a scene where two friends, one black male and one white male, were just talking about these issues. And the black gentleman said, but what if you had to walk up against all of these barriers your whole life? And the white guy's like, what barriers? What are you talking about? And the way they played it out, it showed you that there are people who are not mean-spirited necessarily. Right. There are plenty who are.
Yes, there. Yes.
But that the idea that he was most qualified when he was actually presenting someone else's idea, a woman's idea.
Yes.
But didn't want to invite her to the meeting because he didn't want to set false expectations because, well, if she didn't earn the right to be there, won't it just set up false expectations like she belongs? When it was her idea, but the conversation and the oblivion towards the reality that he has lived his entire life with this particular character without thinking about those barriers.
That's right.
But the woman whose ideas he was running with, or his friend who's a black male, are trying to explain to him
what it's
he
like.
kept saying, like, well, like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know what you're say that again. Like, what do you? But those things don't exist. Like, there's no barriers. There's no difference. They simplified it in a bit in this movie, but they made it very clear that there are people who just can't or just refuse to see those realities.
Right.
The
And
society of the magic Negro.
Yeah,
That's what it's called,
that's right.
magical Negro.
And early, I would get really angry because I'm like,
Open your eyes.
Right, open your eyes. And then as I've done DEI work and learning, this is part of the problem. There are multiple realities. And what we're asking people in the world to do is understand that your reality and my reality can coexist. And my reality being my reality doesn't mean that yours is not true.
Right.
But likewise, your reality can't mean that my reality is not true.
Right.
Right?
And I think one of the places, Michelle, of frustration in that particular scene, or maybe it was a later scene, was the black character was trying to say, I know this isn't your reality.
Right.
But we're friends.
And I'm
you're
sharing.
And I'm sharing, and you're not listening.
Or
And
believing.
Or believing. And that brings a whole nother level to it that, okay, I get it that you don't see it.
Right.
But
but now I've told you.
Exactly. I remember once I used to sell cars in another life. I lost my first job out of college before I started working for UW and then doing ministry, but in my community work. But early on in our marriage, Jackie did not want to go to the mechanic alone. She said, well, they treat me different. I was like, no, Jackie, they don't. And then I said, Jackie, I used to work at a car dealership, and they do. And I caught myself, and I thought about things we said, or things we laughed at, or things we let slip. And I had to ask myself, not only did I not listen to what my wife was saying, but I wanted to convince her that it was not a reality, that she was wrong.
That she was wrong.
And when I thought through it, it absolutely was true.
Yeah.
But so where was I trained in my chauvinism? Where was I trained to say, no, you're not going to believe it, and then you're going to convince her that she's imagining it, and I was very embarrassed because I felt like I bought into something that I wasn't trying to buy into, but I'm completely complicit. It was my fault. But I tried to look at that experience and say, I wonder if sometimes white men in particular find themselves, because the other part of it is I didn't want to grapple with the fact that I had access and an opportunity, but that my wife didn't. For some reason, I just didn't want to go there.
Yes.
So maybe our white friends are thinking, you know what? I just don't want to believe that your experience with the police or your experience in court or your experience in an interview when you walk down the street is any different than mine, because I don't know what to do with that and I can't fix it and I want to fix it and I can't. So I'm going to convince you that if you keep thinking that you're wrong or you're deranged or you feel sorry for yourself.
That's right.
So now we're on a mission of convincing you you're wrong.
That's right. That's right. And so when we talk about these things, we have to get away from the right and wrong and start having some of these conversations about, I call it the multiple realities.
That's really powerful, Michelle. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, we could talk on and on and on, but I really appreciate your taking time to come by here. Again, I want to congratulate you for your presidency. I had dual meetings going on at the Madison Club a couple of weeks ago, but I got there early so I could come to your reception.
Thank you very much.
See you and congratulate you and to give you a hug. It was great to see your son because we've only talked by Zoom.
That's right.
And so it was good to see him and his wife in person. And I'm just excited about what's going to happen in your presidency. And I hope, maybe halfway through your term, as you're wrapping things up in your biennium, that maybe you'll come back and we can talk about the things that you've wanted to accomplish, that you're able to accomplish, to talk about what it looks like.
I would be happy to.
As you near the end of your presidency. But I'm so proud, and I'm even more proud now that you hail from Madison and the reasons behind that and the commitment and the rewards and the scars. But together it's helped to make you who you are. It's allowed you to navigate where you do and to have the success that you have. And that's really, really wonderful. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It is a community,
Yes,
and you don't do it by yourself. So.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
So listen, folks, my special guest has been Michelle Behnke, the newly elected president of the American Bar Association, as well as a local attorney here at Boardman Clark, and a woman who's run her own practice for 16 years?
26.
26
years on my own.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Has been my very special guest today. Hey, listen, as we close, I want to remind you of a few things. Please join the private Facebook group and join the conversation and answer this week's question. So there's actually a question that's going to be waiting for you. So please join it so that you can do that. And let me just take a moment and just thank my wonderful team. I have not received the awards and the accolades that I have, or lasted for 10 seasons, or hit 450,000 unique downloads, or have put up almost 190 episodes without the help of Eli Steenlich, who oversees social media, editing, and production, Jeremy Holliday, who's in charge of research, editing, and production, Don Thornton, who's in charge of guest invites and production, Ariana Proctor, who's responsible for creating and moderating the listener space. She's waiting for you on Facebook right now. And Jakisha Hunt, who's in charge of my merch. She has designed my merchandise. And so with the help of these great people, I get to bring this wonderful podcast to you regularly. So listen, As always, I want to challenge you. Don't just settle for being entertained by today's discussion. Think deeply about it. You know someone who needs to hear this. Post it, write a comment, wherever it is you download, write a review of this. If you're real daring, click our Patreon link and support this for as little as $2 a month. Come on. That's cheaper than the cream that goes in your coffee. Not just your coffee, but the cream. And all of that support allows us to continue to bring a very high quality product to you. So become a part of the change that you want to see. Don't just listen to this information, lean into it and do something with it, because we want this podcast to motivate you to be a part of a real society, a real world that cares about everyone. All right. So thank you for listening to another episode, exciting episode, I might add, of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. Have a great day.
Black like me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.